roll for.
Barely.
Just barely. Okay, let's call a meeting to order. And we'd like to welcome Tom McGinney to the fold. He tells me he's read the P&Z book and is ready for any questions.
Right.
Well, I think that was a good statement.
It'd be a test.
I'm gonna sit really close to you.
Yeah.
Oh, Adam, this is the minutes of May 2nd meeting. You gave us the minutes of the April 4th. I didn't have any minutes.
I must have
We
ran
did have
out
a
of
May
a copy.
We did have a May 2nd. Here, April 4th.
Let me go pull them out.
We should
Okay.
have them
We
over
had a May
there.
2nd, we had a May 2nd meeting, because I have notes all over it.
Yeah.
Arnie,
Okay,
Steve,
we've
and
been-
Tammy, and,
Yeah, and then the evening of the first thing.
yeah.
Is it just the wrong date?
I don't know. Do we have some? We have some. Trying to psych me out there.
Just short.
Oh, it says park board meeting, approval of the minutes of the
Park
park
board
board meeting.
meeting.
Maybe you're not looking at it, but we did have a May 2nd meeting.
I think these might be the minutes from just the wrong date. He's talking about the fee schedule
Oh, it is.
and the site plans.
You just put the wrong date
I
on
think
it.
we just had the wrong date at the top.
You're right. It should be May 2nd.
Yeah.
That is. Sharon, Steve, and Arlen.
Here.
Yeah. So it looks like he's just looking over the minutes.
He said he's gonna set with the right date.
Okay.
We'll approve them all.
This was, yeah, because we talked about the annual fee schedule. You're right, Arnie.
It's been a while, but.
Yeah.
Yes.
On my notes, it does say that. The site plan, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that one did change.
Good evening.
I'm glad you were trying to figure this out here.
Did we get a part today?
Yeah.
I didn't clean it.
Okay, cool.
Did you have to reset?
I've had to read it.
Okay. I'll have it there tomorrow.
I see that 90.
Oh, yeah, looming.
Oh, yeah, that
90 degrees.
Okay, okay. Now we have the May 2nd meeting.
I move we approve the minutes.
Hey,
from May
thanks,
2nd.
Arnie.
I'll second.
Hey, Steve, is there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carried. Okay, old business, and Terry did give you a list of other permits. Who put the press box at the school? Like a baseball game?
Yeah.
Any questions for Terry? Not, let's move ahead to an update on Millie's building. Do we have one?
Yep, Willie sent us a letter, I believe.
Adam has that?
Yeah, Mr. Osborne came in about 3-4 weeks ago, I believe it was, and there was a short discussion on the state of the property and of course, he really expressed his intentions of putting a roof on the property and using the property at that. That's still his plan. I expressed to him that he has exceeded the time limit that he originally provided us, which actually prompted us sending him another letter, basically demanding that action be taken. The letter included provisions to complete the process by the end of this season, this building and operation season. So I guess my question to the board would be, and Terry's question to the board might be, whether or not that's acceptable to the terms of which you want to agree to, or do you want to continue action against Mr. Osborne?
What do you determine is the end of this building season?
He said December, but he's not going to be able to do any work. And let's be all honest, what he's done by mid-November is about all he's going to get done. He's not going to be able to do any work from mid-November through December.
Did he sound like he had positive intentions of doing it, or?
He continues to claim, and of course, I have to admit, I don't check too much on the weekends on him, but he made the contention that he does spend some time there every weekend doing something on the property.
Really?
Particularly cleaning up the internal sides of the property.
Well, I know he was gone the last whole week. The reason I know that his wife works for my wife, and they were on vacation in Okoboji for the last 7 days. So he hasn't done anything in the last week.
What did your second letter say? Just notifying him that
Just
Yeah.
he's dragging his feet?
Time's up.
His time is up. He has 30 days to complete the, under law, I have to give him certain periods of time. We gave him what we believe is reasonable, a 30-day time period to complete the process. And of course, that's what prompted, I believe, his visit with them. Then past that is when, of course, I explained to him that if he wanted to respond to the letter, that he should not do so verbally, he should do so written. And that's when we received the letter.
I'd like to have a copy of that. Sure.
What does your ordinance say? I mean, are you able to, once you give someone a time, if you gave him a 30-day time limit and then he came back and said the building season, are you able to do that, or do you run into a time when it's like, okay, now you either have it done by this date or you pay, or what?
Well, that's up to you guys to some degree. What our procedures within the ordinance state is that I have to give him 2 opportunities. I have to give him a first notice and a second notice. If he fails to conform within the second notice, then the city can take legal action against him.
We haven't given him a second notice.
No, we have not. It coincided with this meeting opportunity.
We asked for a letter, and he sent us a letter, and we were dissatisfied with progress, so we served him, and that's when he came in. So I would, if progress doesn't start or doesn't continue, I would imagine my next order of business would be to serve him with a second notice.
And that's
then
at the
from there
council
you go
ordinance?
to court.
Is that the council ordinance that we're looking at?
It's actually, I believe, state. I think.
Well, it's the terms of the city ordinance is described by the state.
Right.
But, yeah, we
I think
have
it's
to
Iowa
provide
code.
him adequate of an opportunity to respond. You might remember when this all started, we sent him a notice at that time, giving him 30 days.
Oh,
That's when we got the first letter, stating that he
No,
would
we
have...
didn't send him a notice then. We asked him for his intentions, or you hadn't asked for intentions. And at that time, he wrote a letter that said by the end of this year. And when no progress was being shown, that was when we served him.
I believe the first letter was through May of this year, that by the end of May this year, he planned to have it completed.
Yeah,
So
see,
now it's the end of the year, you said?
the end of this year. That was a letter he sent to us. that
In
he
the last
brought in.
few weeks, yeah, this is just in the last few
Oh, that was his intention.
He's actually delivered us 2 letters.
Correct. The first one was to be completed by the end of this May. The second one
No, I think it was it's in here.
I think it was 6 months, if I remember right, but I think we determined that the end of that 6 months was the end of May.
We have both probably have.
The building's been like that for 1 year, 2 years, but
I would say January would be 2.
Yeah, 2 years, the same way with the Winchell building with the hole in the roof.
Yep.
It's 2 years.
Yep.
so what are your wishes?
See, I'd like to give him more time if I think he's going to do something, but if we're just...
I don't
Yeah.
mind it if you see progress.
If we
Yeah.
see progress,
How many times do we do that? And then if we do it, do we do it for the next person and set a precedent? Well, I know.
We have enough messes around town.
Yeah.
Bottom line, we have seen no progress.
Well, depends what your definition of progress is.
Significant.
The roof fell in and he's picked out quite a bit of the roof. But if you determine that to be progress, that
Yes.
What is the address of the building?
Oh, I don't know. Can't tell you that.
No.
103?
Third Street?
When you
That's
go
not
home,
Third.
or when you leave here, I believe we have it spray painted on the plywood on the west side of the building.
You know which place we're talking about.
It's 10 something.
Right.
10 something 3rd Street?
No, the address is actually to the west, which would be, I believe, East State.
Southwest State Street.
It'd be right behind the
Car dealership.
car dealer, they use car
The old
dealer.
liquor store.
Okay,
Right on the alley there.
Mhm.
all right.
In front of it faces the courthouse property.
Okay, thanks.
You know, maybe we can come up with some, let's think about this while Adam's going to bring us up to speed on the dilapidated and abandoned properties from the League of Cities meeting, and maybe we can come up with something. I pulled that article out of the paper about a town in Boston, Massachusetts, where they used to put a 4x8 piece of plywood on the side of it with the owner's name and telephone number and let everybody call him.
Part of the problem is, he was gonna have Wirtjes tear this down. And since the roof fell in, the asbestos inspection is impossible. So you're forced to treat the whole property as asbestos contaminated, and their estimate was 50 to 60,000 to take it down. And that's, if he could have just tore it down and hauled it away, he said, well, I know it was Jason Kraft
They would take
had
care
him
of
lined up to do it.
Yeah.
Or that he had Wirtjes lined up to do it. And until this asbestos thing, you have to, the whole building has to be tore down while being wetted, and then loaded in a semi that has 2 6-mil plastic bags sealed and then pumped wet, which requires 2 asbestos people. And they figured $50,000 to $60,000.
What, when we take a look at that, and we're looking at that property in front of that car dealership, what are they going to finish? They just going to leave it like it is now, or what?
I guess that's a big question I want to talk about tonight. Is, to me, I feel we have too many building permits out there that are over a year old, that haven't applied for another permit, that the projects aren't done.
We did put a
Right.
timeline on those, but the building permits are different than those that just, I mean,
Right.
they didn't get a building permit to
No,
sign
they
that
didn't
car.
have to.
No, I understand that. I'm talking about projects that I can remember that we did issue permits for,
Yeah.
that aren't. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of like Jerry. I'm willing to give Willie some time. I want to see some progress. You know, he isn't going to put that roof up in a weekend. You know, I'm sure all of us here kind of watched the progress of Above the Hub and Pugh's building. You know, and they have a crew there and equipment.
Well, if you could see half of the roof done by the middle of October or something, I mean, if you could see the progress with the rest of the roof being completed before the end of the year, I mean, I don't know what I'd make him have it done in 30 days, but that's me, so.
I don't think you're going to see the start of the roof.
Well, we're not if we just keep saying, yeah, it's okay, it's okay.
No, but I mean, if you sit there and you look at the structure that he's got to pull out of there before he can even start putting the roof back on,
We have to work it.
that's right.
And the problem is, we take him to court.
And every time we take people to court, you get another 30 days.
I have
You
time.
get another
Or
day's
they'll
extension.
tell the city to go ahead
Right.
and tear it down.
But we had no money.
Right. That's the problem.
Nothing to back us up, so.
Yeah,
Back us where we're at.
I'm not happy with the judicial system with
There's been some discussion with them, and they're figuring out that cities are getting tired of this, so.
that. Yeah, we're not the only town fighting
No.
this.
No.
And any chance that you get to speak to them? Trust me, I have their cell phone numbers, so.
Okay, so let's do it. Let's give him that time and tell him that this is it. I mean, it has to happen. Or you will serve him with the court.
Yeah.
Otherwise it'll cost him so much a day. I don't know what you find, I don't know which ordinance says. Does it say
I
so
think it's
much?
up to $1,000 municipal infraction. It's either 700 or 1,000.
What do you think, the end of the year, Jerry?
Yeah.
If you
As
delay
Let's
the-
get that,
Completed.
and I
if
will
you
take
delay
the
the
truck
process,
and show
will
them
then you
what
have to
the...
start over the letters?
I don't know, I think so.
Well, let's be all honest, in the middle of the winter, that's probably not gonna make that
Well,
big of a
no,
difference.
but
I mean,
I just tell them, there's a drop-in date. I don't know if I'd make it December 31st, guys, let's face it. We have a winter like we've had before, that's not gonna be conducive, so. I mean, this is, we've got September, October, and November, that's 90 days.
So you're thinking end of November, perhaps? I know, 30 days, but.
You heard what I said, yeah. You guys are the lenient ones.
That's to show significant progress within the.
No,
timeframe?
they haven't finished.
Okay.
I would say finished.
By when? End of November? I think you get in December, forget it, you're gonna get put on.
Yeah, December, I wouldn't even go there. Basically, that's
Okay, that's
giving him
enough.
3 months.
Okay.
End of
90 days.
November, 90 days.
And I'd notify him right away. So he knows he's got the 90 days.
With what will happen if he doesn't.
Right.
Yes, which, yeah, you're gonna have to find your teeth in the ordinance to explain that. That's, once again, that's a council ordinance, not a P and Z ordinance. That's what gets so confusing. Because if
Right.
you Terry somehow it gets to serve.
It's both sides.
Yeah, lucky Terry.
Well, it'll go on.
Right.
Yeah, so. But I mean, you know, it's been long enough. I mean, enough's enough.
Well, we're talking 2 years at least.
But I think you also need to maybe stop and check on the people in front of them too and say, when you're completing this project. I mean, we appreciate what you've done so far, but our job is finished, right? Was
There's
done.
more to be done.
Yes, so, okay, you want to tackle the next one before we go into your presentation?
you need a motion on that.
Okay.
End of November 2011 on the election.
I'll move.
Second.
Is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. There you have it. End of November. Okay, complete. This time we need business, right? Okay. The Wanchell building. We've had some discussions with another asbestos mitigator that's supposed to be sending us a bid. But we haven't received it yet. We asked for that 3 weeks or a month ago. I don't know what it is. It's another one of those instances where I don't understand how the people that inspect it also get to mitigate the.
Yeah, there's something wrong with
Mm-hmm.
That
You're
whole
right.
system. I'll tell you what, they better get it fixed soon before the legislative session starts, because, oh, here we go. Actually, I talked to him on the 18th of July, and I sent him the written report on August 1st. I talked to him again on the 12th of August. I talked to him again on the 19th of August, and each time he said he would give me a quote. And each time I haven't received anything, so. And I don't know where, I think the mayor's working on the project as well, but I don't know where we are today with that.
They pretty much got everything lined up. I think they were more wanting to see if there was an alternative option with the asbestos.
Could be an alternative option, we could have a, we could do it ourselves. Yeah. Maybe you want to give us what you've learned, and maybe there's something in this material that we can use to take care of our problems. Going to new business here, and Adam went to the League of Cities Small City Workshop in Sioux Rapids, yeah.
it. Wish it was somebody who-
There's a couple of different things here. One is a handout I handed to you, and another one is a presentation that they provided to us. What you basically have on your front page, it's just a list of resources for the most part. It tells you about some of the different codes that exist in different cities. You'll see that they're all relatively consistent with what you see for
Yeah,
other
more so.
cities.
Do you have-
There's about 2 entities. There's about 2 entities in the state that actually prepare new code work for cities. So you'll see that they're pretty consistent. You'll see Chapter 50, and below you'll see where it discussed in the city of Al Burnett. And you'll look at, if you flip over to the city of Pottsville, and one thing you'll notice is a lot of the chapters seem to coincide with each other a little bit, and particularly with ours. It's not hard to tell we all use the same people to write our codes. I didn't necessarily see a lot of advantage to the handout and to the reference information. One of the things that was helpful is when you got to this packet back here behind you. Talks about the informal nuisance abatement process, talks about all the different practices that are attempted to use to collect. One in particular that seemed to be discussed at some length is there seems to be more and more of a push to use the courts to come to some type of resolution. In the exceptions, and it suggests in here that you don't want to use that particularly for mowing, for trash and debris cleanup. We don't use it. And ice on sidewalks, things, junk, things of that indication usually are not the type of things you take before the court. But if you look at number 5, you'll see the municipal infraction. That's the court assist nuisance abatement process. One of their recommendations was to use nuisance abatement a lot of times in dealing with some of these properties. You'll see in there that it talks about, and it says not to exceed $750 for the first violation, surely, and $1,000 for the second and succeeding violations. So that's the limit on the civil penalty for a municipal infraction, which we updated ours the last time the state updated it. So ours would be consistent with those rules. What they basically say, though, is that the court basically has the right, nothing that we don't already know from this standpoint, the court has the right to choose what type of corrective action that they require, whether it be to give them more time to conform, whether it be they release the city to take action, which of course one of the things that we would tend to want to move away from is we would want to ask the court to consider alternative options to that in most cases, particularly in cases where it might be excessive for the city to be responsible for the outlay. The other popular option, of course, is the penalty option, which we would be open to that option because there is a financial collection, and those can not only be attached to the property themselves, but also to the individual themselves. That's a new piece of teeth that you're now seeing in the law. Is that if these people have bad properties and they're not taking care of them, it's not just the property that you can go after; it's the individual you can go after as well.
Adam, could you back up a minute? Does our ordinance actually have the teeth that the state is allowing us to have? Because once you get it before the judges, if they don't have if the ordinance doesn't have the teeth behind the ordinance, then how can they make anybody comply with it?
Yeah, that's covered in our ordinance. We updated our ordinance the last time we.
I like number 2. I see this determining and documenting the existence of a nuisance by inspection.
And there's a whole discussion portion in this about gaining access via an inspection. There is a process where you can actually receive court-ordered inspection rights as a community to go onto these properties to determine whether or not they are a nuisance issue or not. If in the cases where you might have somebody that refuses to allow you to inspect for a nuisance issue, which I don't think we've ran into that too terribly much, but that's even another aspect of it that they clarified in the discussion. We don't have any protocols within our ordinance for that purpose, but I don't believe we need to have it in that purpose.
We've brought that up before because the city of Early has that on their rental properties and stuff, and I brought that before P&Z before and said, this is something that you could do, because you either inspect the properties, you had 6 months to bring it up to code, or you tear it down, one or the other. And there's no reason why we can't have in Sac City at least as much teeth as our smaller communities have. It's just a matter of putting those ordinances in place.
Now, there is different rules for multiple occupancy properties compared to single residency properties.
We don't seem to have the problem with the multi, that like to do the single. I don't think,
No, in fact, I can't think of one offhand.
in the old apartments.
Oh,
That's about the only one I.
There is some other conversation to some degree about, the city does have the right in the process, if we can ask the judge in the process of a judgment to actually turn the property over to the city. That requires us to work a little bit with the county as far as the process goes. But the bigger issue there is that we can do that for one of two reasons. One, we can do it because we have a third party who's interested in taking the property and taking on the abatement of the property, whether it is, but there's some rules according to how they can do that. They either have to bring the property up to code, or they have to tear it down and commit to replacing it. They can't just buy it for the purposes of tearing down the lot, at least the way it was explained to us when they discussed the issue. The second one is of course, the city can take it free of lien from the property owner for the purposes of then disposing of the property themselves. Of course, in that process, then, you find the same circumstances as where the city would be responsible for the abatement process on the property. You're assuming the process there as well.
but the first one you mentioned, they would have to build something back?
Correct. Say for instance, one of you was interested in the Winchell property. I'll just use it as a recognizable example. If one of you was interested in that property from the perspective that you're interested in putting up a barbecue stand or something like that at that property after the purposes, and this doesn't really work because it's a non-residential property, but I'll continue on. In that process, we could request that the court provide us ownership, title of the property, with the intent of providing the property to a third-party entity for the purposes of abating the process and improving the property. You do have that option with the courts.
But improving is not just tearing it down, and if it's a residential and seeding it and having a nice grassy area.
And from what was explained to us, that is not an acceptable transfer
Let's do
for
that.
that purpose. You also see that it can be obtained for a tax sale purpose. Of course, that's already available to some degree to many of these property owners, because what happens with most of these properties is that they don't, of course, sell on back. They don't pay their taxes, so therefore they go on the back taxes. But as we're already well aware of, most of the people who buy the back taxes on this property, once they identify the properties, usually aren't willing to accept ownership of the property, and so therefore they give up their claim and basically allow the property to go back to the county. So it talks about that as an option, but that option really, I think we all kind of agreed in the room that night, really isn't working for any of us from the perspective of seeing the properties get cleaned up. It may mean that the taxes on the property might be getting paid on a regular basis, but that no one's really resolving the actual eyesore issue of the property. Let's see. They spent a lot of time.
We get to judge.
Yeah, but you call that a nuisance?
That's a nuisance.
What nuisance is this?
That's the yard.
Are there any other nuisance?
Can't see any poles. Is it even occupied?
You can't determine that from the picture.
Is there something in that center window?
It's busted,
Can't see it.
but they said the house is habitable, so it's not a condemnable house, but it is a nuisance property, being particularly from the grass, the excessive grass. That's an easy one.
Windows are broken out of that one already.
Oh, it's like my neighborhood.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Oh, this is pathetic. Yeah, we could be taking these pictures right now.
This was because of growth and brush, was recognized as a nuisance. by the picture, it was hard to determine. There was a question about abandonment, simply from the fact that it looked as if the property had not been used for a while, but it's hard to determine that, simply from the fact that you really, without being able to look at the house and see if there's any usage of the house, abandonment is very hard to prove. Abandonment is basically that the owner has walked away from the property completely. Something as simple as mowing the property can negate an argument of abandonment. And we've kind of seen that come up before in discussions with the city attorney. This property would be identified once again for the yard purposes as a nuisance. Not necessarily anything other than there was a concern that was brought up that this wiring looks like it's been broke off, and that that may add to the value of an argument that this property has been abandoned by the fact that there is not, there seems to be some unused utility when that's running up to the property. But that's not a guarantee. Is this a nuisance?
I'm done, yes.
I guess yes, but I'm thinking it isn't.
Probably
They said in
not.
most cities this would never get charged. The biggest argument you might have might be junk on the outside. The actual house itself, while there might be a question about its structural, its state structurally,
Yep.
the biggest violation you might have here is a general maintenance issue with the property itself. More than likely, you would never see this property get charged for nuisance purposes. Yeah, easy one.
Yeah, we're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, the roof is a dead giveaway. The roof is a guarantee, but he noticed in this house you've got a window missing up here, you've got a hole in the roof, you got a window boarded up here. It looks like you likely have a situation where this front window has been covered up. And of course the grass is somewhat being maintained, which would probably make the argument, unless this was taken in early spring, this property is probably not abandoned. It simply is a nuisance property.
I'd say the windows must have broken out.
And this is where they kind of got off buildings for a little bit and started focusing on other things. And they were going on talking about, for instance, most people when they clean snow in front of their house, you know, they're not taking every little bit of snow off the front of their house. They would spend a little bit of time talking about when does leftover snow in front of your house constitute still a nuisance remaining and not remaining. I really don't know that we've ever ran into an issue in our community where that's really been an argument. Usually you find that more in commercial districts. It's usually where that comes into play, where you don't have a commercial property owner that does theirs and everybody else does. As it melts, it gets small, but it also gets dangerous. I'm going to guess it don't run.
I would guess so.
In this case, the example they gave, of course, this is what would be identified as a junk vehicle. It likely has not been licensed, so therefore it is not registered. Any vehicle sitting in your yard, it's also not sitting on any type of, at least it does, I can't see any gravel sitting there. It was kind of the compelling argument that there's a lot of things wrong with this picture from the perspective of that vehicle. Where it's parked, the state of the vehicle, and of course the fact that it likely wasn't even have a current registry. Yeah, I didn't put this one in there.
They probably got rid of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about that one. I'll just keep going. They get a little harder with this one. Is this a nuisance property?
Those broken windows?
We determined there was probably some broken windows.
Is that the water plant?
It looks like some kind of government building. He said in the long run, these usually, once again, this would fall into that category that probably wouldn't constitute a nuisance. It isn't so much of a safety risk. It isn't so much of a health risk. It really doesn't fall into the argument of probably being the paramount enough of an eyesore to constitute being a nuisance property. And it's hard to tell looking here. Maybe the grass is an issue. It's hard to tell from the angle of the picture whether or not it's an issue or not. Another what looks to be, that looks like a schoolhouse to me. Question was, does this constitute a nuisance or not?
I think that's it. Is that
You
the
can, if
That's
the
what I
board
was gonna say, look like it.
It looks like it.
well, his comment was likely yes. And where he went into this is he says, I don't think there's any windows left in that property. More than likely, where this comes in as a nuisance is it's probably a live animal location at this point, just based upon the amount of foot access to the property.
Oh, but the other one wasn't, right? I mean, birds could have flown in the other. Oops.
Anyone seeing? It's a hard picture to see.
I'm not seeing it
Yes.
from that,
The upper story.
but must be something there.
There was an awning that was broken down in this area here. And the question was, does that broken awning that's hanging low constitute a nuisance? It would be more of a general maintenance item than it actually would be a nuisance. But there could be an argument made because there is a safety concern, being that it is a commercial district. One thing he's trying to point out is what is a nuisance in one district may not be a nuisance in another district in your community. That you could not be afraid to look at your districts from a different standpoint and perspective of how the properties are used. If it's used for commercial purposes, there may be a higher safety risk for something that you might consider lesser of an issue in a commercial district than there is in a residential area. The generic answer here was it ended up being a nuisance, but what they ended up giving this property a nuisance for, he said, is what you can't see. And that's the fact that the whole back end of the building's gone. And then that was kind of where he finished it. His comment was, he said, of these three buildings, the funny thing is that the only one that had been cited as being a nuisance was the middle one. The other two had not.
Relative to that, it looks like two or three said no.
And maybe that's more of a matter of perspective. Went into giving you the definition of a nuisance, and that's where we go back. Health, unreasonably offensive smell, obstruction to free use. You have to really look at it from what the definition of a nuisance is when you're actually making a determination. That's why some of those that we looked at and said, yeah, they're not in the greatest of shape, but they're probably not a nuisance violation, is because you have to factor in whether or not it's offensive, whether or not it is injurious to health, is a risk. Things of that nature have to be taken into consideration. What's deemed a nuisance? Well, it kind of goes into further explaining that it's basically injurious or dangerous to the health, comfort, or property of individuals or the public. Is it filth, noisome, substance? Is it unwholesome or pure to the water system, not to our senses?
But injurious and dangerous to the health. Does our ordinance cover that?
Yes, yes. It goes into talking about where other places where nuisance are used. This is really outside the scope of looking at the properties itself. Dense smoke and noxious fumes, we have that covered actually under a provision of the code. Dense growth, of course, we have that covered actually in two different places under our city code right now. Trees affected with Dutch elm are covered right now, and of course houses of ill fame is also covered by ordinance right now, specifically provided.
Need to add the pine.
Yeah, we're gonna add the
disease,
pine.
Yeah.
Scotch pine. We're losing a lot of them in town.
Tell you what, those are good fire hazards.
Yeah.
Well, right now, and I will have to check with DNR if they have made a push to change it. Right now, I don't believe that the section that this is written against actually defines any other tree disease other than Dutch elm. But I can check with them.
Should,
Ash borer.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
coming out.
certainly.
We have other provisions that actually cover good portions of this, with the exception, I don't believe, we have that covered under our solid waste ordinances, actually. And then we have property maintenance is failure to maintain, and that's kind of an ordinance that recently Councilman Frohart has asked us to take more and more of a look at how we're going to be using the general maintenance code ordinance in the city code right now. That's something we're looking at. He's gonna go through some of the properties. That was what the inside of that property looked like. Is that fit for human occupancy?
See, who determines that? If you have the ordinance, do you determine that, or once again, we're right back to the inspector mode, or does a sanitarian, or?
That we have asked the health department to offer the sanitarian for making those determinations, and they did accept. So if we have a question about the habitability of a property, we have the sanitarian for that purposes to make that determination. So they're taking you through basically what would be the steps on this property.
Sure.
If they refuse to let you in, that's why we were discussing it earlier. They provide an administrative search warrant. Basically, you can make an application, the judge holds a hearing, gives you an opportunity to get your warrant. He gets served on the property, you're allowed access to the property at that point. Not that we've had to run into these issues, but if we did, understanding what our options are. Then, of course, we make a response to them, identify the nuisance, condition, city code violation, which we're required to do, request that they take corrective action, suggestion that we make multiple contacts, follow up with 1 or 2 letters directing the nuisance abatement. The point I'm trying to make on this is if you kind of look at what they're saying here, this isn't too different than what we've been doing with Willie to some degree. We've tried working with Willie, and that's one of the things that we can say to the courts is this isn't a new issue for us. We've been working on this property, and we've been trying to be lenient on this property and work with this property owner and seeing what's done. So then you start the written process, doing certified mail, which we recently did. We're required by law to identify certain information in the process. They have an opportunity to make a hearing before the council. We've only had that happen twice in the time I can think I've been here. Both of those involved abandonment processes. Then, of course, it basically tells us what our options are. We can abate the nuisance at our cost if they don't do it and collect it against property taxes, or we can file civil action to initiate a municipal infraction proceeding. If they fail to do it within the time required, it says we can do the process. But what I noticed on here, is they keep talking, they kept pushing to us that you have another option. You can't always go after this infraction process. The one thing that kept coming up that they kept asking is, that's great and all. So we start suing this guy. We start holding this guy liable. But if he doesn't have anything for us to go after, what's that really matter? Talks about the pros and cons of using the administrative process. If we can do it without involving the courts, it's usually done quicker. Once we get in the courts involved, it usually slows the process down. Of course, you don't have the strength behind of a judicial decision then, which makes people less responsive at that point. And then, of course, if you don't use the right process, you could be at risk for not following the proper due process required by state law. It's property owner fails to abate. You know, once again, it talks about your charging the owner with a municipal infraction. We served on the property owner, and basically you have to do sheriff service. Maintain a nuisance in a particular location, describe the nuisance. There's all the requirements we have in it. Request the imposition of a civil penalty not to exceed $750 for the first violation, $1,000 for the second and succeeding violations. Question is how often does a violation occur? Well, depending on the court could say if the reasonable time to respond is 30 days, every 30 days is a new violation. If it's something like mowing, for instance, they could even say that every day is a new violation because they could resolve the problem within that time period. So that's a little bit up to the judge to make a decision on what period would actually identify as the period of time of which a succeeding violation would occur. Oh, can require that they take action and restrain from future violations. Of course, we can negotiate with them, which probably is, you could argue, is not too similar to what we've been doing with the Winchell property for some time. Then, of course, it talks more about the time to abate it with the civil penalty and how that gets all affected. Fails to abate, consent decree was ordered by the court. You can hold the property order in contempt. That's one of the advantages of the court system. And then, of course, the nice thing is the civil penalty actually doesn't always go against the property. You can actually get it against the owner, which is an important factor since many of these properties are actually not of a particular value. Of course, the one they tend to like to do is hand it back over to us, which we know has not always been working. And then, of course, our costs can be added or assessed. Let's see, under any ordinance passed by county. This is talking about the tax sale process.
All that information is in here though, I see, right?
Yep.
All in that handout.
I keep telling you about things that you probably can do, but where you always come back to the fact that we have these properties and we need to do something about them. We had the opportunity to take a couple people on tours of the community in the past month, and I'll tell you what, I'm embarrassed. And it's hard to hold somebody's attention away from some of this stuff, and it just needs to be cleaned up. Because it certainly doesn't make a good first impression. Somebody new here today from, he's a new employee to a utility company, show me around your community. Okay. That was a thrill. Then what do you say? Well, we are, what are you doing about this? Absolutely nothing. I don't know where you want to go with some of this. I know I'm not exactly a young person and I try to take care of my properties. I don't know why people can't take care of theirs. And it's pretty sad. And it certainly drives the value of your home down if you live next door to it. What do we hope to do with this? Hope to encourage the council to be more aggressive about this? I just made myself a note. I think we need to have when the Sac County League of Cities meets, I think they need to have the judges come and we need to have a discussion about this. That's a good topic for a program. So we'll let all the cities talk about it at once. I can tell you I've talked to, like I said, talked to the judges and told them, we're tired of this. We're going to expect their support, so.
What kind of feedback do you get from the judges when you say, are they receptive or?
One of them said, I am sick and tired of this. I can't believe what people do to the property. I'm with you all the way. Call the other way. So I did. So I said, give me your cell phone numbers. I called the other way. I said, listen, I am tired of this. You and I have spoken about this before. I don't want to have to call you again. I don't want you to call me either, Shirley. Well, then, work with me here.
Yeah, I'm sure they get tired of seeing this stuff. I mean, it's like wasting your
Yeah.
time.
Well, it is.
Well, and what you see here has actually started to occur is a lot of the cities just don't even start the process. Because we know what the end game is going to be in the process, and if we know what the end game is, the issue is why tax our time, or with a lot of our communities, the dollars of having an attorney to do the process, just to know in the end how it's going to end up.
Because you continue to have a community then with dilapidated properties and nobody's values are worth anything, Adam. So you're driving down your assessed valuation of your community by not addressing these things.
What I'm saying is that by the acts of the courts, you're seeing less and less cities actually take them to court as
Well,
response.
I think that there can be something worked out with that, but we're going to have to be the people that pursue it. I mean, the judges aren't going to come to us and say, what do you think about this? The cities are going to have to go to them. And some cities are more aggressive than others as far as saying, no, we're not going to allow that in our community. I am appalled, totally appalled, that we actually have homes here that are not fit for people to live in, and they are living in them, let alone the yard, it's the homes. It's like, holy crap. I mean, you see those TV shows, we've got them right here,
Yeah, we
folks.
do have some of those.
Probably more than, you probably see more than I
Yeah.
do, or
Yeah.
Gary or somebody.
I've been in plenty more than you.
Yeah,
You have two in your
Yeah.
job.
that are,
Tom, I know you're the new man on the board. I know you've lived in Sac City a number of years, and I think you're just like the rest of us. What's your feeling? I guess, I know I've talked to Jerry here in the last week. He's been on the board, I think him and Shirley the longest. Maybe Jerry's been there longer than Shirley has. But what's your feeling? Why did you come on the board to hope for action? I guess that's a question I have. That's why I came on the board, but I'll tell you, I'm tired of the, we talked the Winchell property, that's right next door to me, Matt's old shoe store. We started that process before the ice storm hit.
yeah.
And if you guys would like to look, I'll sure invite you up to my house, and you'll see the hole in the roof that you could put a Volkswagen through.
Absolutely.
Actually, I think my Yukon can fit through.
Probably by now.
Yeah.
And I guess this is what gets me, and until you actually, like Shirley says, drive up and down the streets and start taking pictures. I know when I hopped on board Man Live, I think I had 25 or 30 pictures I brought to my first meeting. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And I don't know what your feeling is. I hope that we can get together and start doing something, pushing the council into doing something. And I guess I like to hear that Nick is concerned. But we need to do something. To me, our morale in this town is terrible. And being a business on Main Street, I'm going to throw it here on the table. Maybe you don't like to hear this, but we need to do something. If Highway 20 is going to be coming, I've got to do anything that I can to get them off of Highway 20 to come into my shop. And if they come down North 5th Street, look what they look at.
On Main Street.
And I got to thank Dale. I don't know. Yeah, Dale's still here. But I appreciate that the Maintenance Club cleaned up the sign on the north end of town.
Actually, we need a community-wide pride movement of
Yeah.
some type, but we need to stand behind it. And we need to say, we're not gonna let you go out of this. And if you would drive a different way home and back to work every day,
You
you'd just
definitely
be
see.
appalled.
It's scary. It's scary.
Well, I agree. There's, certain parts of the town that, every part of the town has something that you're not really proud of, And I think if there's anything that we could do to, get somebody to improve it, or, trouble is, it sounds like you don't have a lot of teeth as far as enforcing it. And once it gets to a certain level, it really kind of either falls into a hole.
I think that can be rectified.
That would be wonderful.
But we have to have teeth in the ordinance to provide to the judges in order for them to act on it.
And they gotta want to clean up the property. That's one of the problems, forcing them to do it. A lot of these places you've talked about already, gonna wind up going back to the city if, it's, what do you do? It's just an unfortunate situation.
One of the pieces
They're gonna move, they're gonna let it go back to taxes, then you're right back there.
Maybe we have the reputation of not doing anything about it, so that's why it's happening. I mean, some of my other cities have said, yes, we will. They have torn out halves of blocks of multi-story buildings and turned them into viable green spaces, but it's because they do something.
Well,
And
I
here,
gotta agree,
we
we
just
gotta
sit
start,
here.
but this would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
If the city council would back it, I think that'd be a wonderful way to start.
We've come in here a couple times and made presentations to them, photos of
Mhm.
dilapidated properties and things like that, and things that need to be fixed around the community, but it never goes anywhere. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we just need a different mindset.
Very good.
I don't think we can be Mr. Nice Guy for too much longer. I guess that's my feeling.
We're getting taken advantage of by
There
those
you
that
go. Yeah.
have properties that need attention. So,
And I guess that's my feelings. We've discussed Willie's building for 2 years. I know the Winchell building is,
4 or 5 years.
I'm going to say probably pushing 10 years.
Where we at?
Yeah. I don't even want to bring that up.
Yeah.
I think that's a joke.
Well,
I should have free pass.
suffices to say, everybody has a free pass because we don't ever do anything.
You know, I
So,
just can't,
why bother?
I just can't believe that the city council or the city anything let Sunwise get as far as it went. As far as I'm concerned, somebody should have been there at that trial. Say, hey, Judge, look what you've left me.
Yeah.
Look what you've left me. Whether it's the EPA, city council, whatever. Look what you've left me,
And that property's in limbo, isn't it, Adam?
Yeah.
you know?
The court's basically let him, is giving him, for lack of a better term, a free pass on provision 3 of the judgment. Provision 3 of the judgment is clean up the
Hey,
property.
but inviting back here for a game of golf.
He was able to make that determination based upon financial hardship.
Better take that time, I'll tell you.
But I guess that's a concern I have as a business owner is, I sit here and I look at our access to the community coming down North Fifth, what we're showing people, you know, we sit here, I know Curtis supposedly was on a committee looking into the cemetery. Whatever happened there, Curtis? Anything?
Just need to fundraise,
You know?
and then it's done deal.
But I mean, you know, these are things that we really gotta look at, you know? I know, you know, we don't have a sugar daddy like some other communities have.
You know, maybe the group that was meeting, the Chamber Main Street group, the High 20 group, need to continue to meet, but maybe what they need to be addressing is the community pride issue.
Instead of,
Because I don't think, other than a co-op advertising thing, I don't think anything has come out of that,
coming
so
up,
I think.
that's kind of where it
I think
stopped.
our image as a community has a whole lot to do with it. I mean, I constantly hear comments from people going, geez, take a look at Lakeview and all they've done and how nice their downtown looks and all this kind of stuff. And it just, the pride then goes on. If we don't start someplace,
Sure.
and maybe we need to start downtown, maybe we need to do that and address some of that stuff. And once you make that something to be proud of, then maybe people will be proud of their own individual properties.
What about the young professionals group? Maybe we should get them
That's a good
involved
idea.
somehow.
That's a good idea.
A lot of people there.
Yeah,
that-
they're not as old as we are. and
Yeah,
they
we
can-
don't see anybody in this group.
Right. But the YPs, there's some people on there that are go-getters.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, really is.
Well, if it takes a marketing type campaign to do it, then maybe we need to do it, or,
What's Early's avenue of action on what I call the old Payless Place? Are they getting anywhere with that?
that, they took care of the Watson building first and then Payless building. That guy also rents out here, the old,
Trojan?
Trojan building, and what a mess that is.
Yep.
And he's had bankers and stuff from this committee have written in letters, says, can you even just paint the property? Well, I think it's time we call those people in here and meet them face to face. And that guy, yeah, they're gonna take care of him. I told him, I said, you're giving him too much leniency, you need to go after him right now and give him a deadline. So,
I just wondered, because it didn't sound like anything was gonna happen over there either.
I'm big on deadlines. Drop dead dates.
I don't know, like I said, Highway 20's coming,
Yeah.
you know, and are we gonna be a community that, thanks for passing us by.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't stop either, no, yeah.
You know?
I mean, we need to make it an inviting community, and
Right.
it is embarrassing to
Yeah.
drive people around and take a look, because you cannot, there's no route around this community that you can stay away from every piece of property that is dilapidated. There's no way. Even as fast as I talk, you're like, nah, look here, you know? Or if you look to your right, instead you're like, you know, just, there's too much there. We need to get started. And I don't know where we go with this unless we go back to the council again, but we better have a plan when we go back. So I guess I'd like to see Chamber of Main Street Type 20 meeting. Call
That's a
that
good
again
idea.
and start there and bring some YPs in and have everybody do some brainstorming there. And then come back to the council with a plan, because apparently they don't have a plan, so.
I'll bring that up, I am a Chamber Main Street Board member.
Okay. Start there, unless you guys have a better idea.
Gotta start somewhere, it sounds like a good thing.
Unless we do what this town in Massachusetts does. They allow the town to place a 4 by 8 foot sign on the side of dilapidated buildings with the owner's names, addresses, and telephone numbers.
Can we afford to sign?
We probably can't afford a sign. We could use spray paint, maybe, Tom, that would do it, so. Anyway, you know, there are different ways that different towns attack this, and I used to judge Iowa Community better when those people would apologize if there was one paint job. They'd apologize for the whole town. It's like, we don't even have that here. I don't know. Okay, future board appointments, what are we looking at?
We have a member who will be coming off at the end of the year, and
Well, who would dare do that? He wants to be on another committee?
to stay with our gender requirements, we do need to seek a female to fill the position.
Be time for an
Not my wife.
Oh, that's an idea.
That's a good.
Time for an operation.
Yeah.
I thought since it took us several
For you,
months
go ahead.
to fill up a
I'm not
couple
volunteering
of
for that
positions
one.
last year, might be a good idea if we started now thinking about trying to find somebody to fill that.
Yeah, we'll work on that. If anybody has any ideas, can you notify Adam so that we can do that?
And Cooney's still on?
She is, but she's having another back surgery. I don't know
Okay.
what's happening. She's got a mess, so,
You know, us and Karen and Sharon.
yeah. I don't know where she is, so.
She chairman for a couple of weeks.
So anyway, get a hold of them. Do you, it's free for all here. Anything you want to talk about?
No, I'm just here to listen tonight, get educated.
You're going to learn, you're going to have something to say next time, right?
Yes.
I guess
I know I've heard some concern about meeting at 6:30. I know some of you are new to the board since when I became the secretary. Earlier in the year when I became secretary, the issue is that I have my boy from 4 to 6 till Brandy gets home. If you guys want to meet earlier, I'd be happy to resign as secretary so that you guys can meet earlier in the evening if you'd like.
But then, somebody have to be secretary.
Yes.
I won't be here long enough.
To learn the tricks.
Yeah, to learn how to write legibly.
Yeah.
I took it over when Ms. Hammerschmidt came on the board. No one volunteered at that time, and I said I'd be willing to do it. But I've heard that you guys would like to move back to your 5:30 start time, and if you want to do that, I'd be happy to resign so you can do that. If you want to get it in, get it out, and get out of here earlier in the day.
It just makes it, in the wintertime, it's a little bit easier. We haven't met that much, and we don't meet that every month on a regular basis. And like I said, we're scheduled to meet the first Monday of every month, which just plays havoc from July to after September, so. If we stay on schedule, and we want to meet the first Monday of the month, we meet again on October 3rd. If we skip September altogether, it almost works better for me to meet the last Monday than it does for that. Sometimes this is the 5th Monday, so the 4th Monday would fall in the council meeting all the time. It's the first Monday of the month. Shall we go with October 3rd and see if you have time to, what type of action you get on Willie's building? That'll work for everybody?
That's fine.
You know, as Steve said, when he came on, he went around and listed properties and stuff. If you see things that you think need to be addressed, for goodness sakes, snap a picture, print it out, bring her, and see what we can do. And you can always call Terry. He knows whether he has to serve him with the police, so.
And don't be afraid to take pictures. I guess I throw my digital camera in the delivery van for details, and Saturday, that's my day that I deliver. So I'm out and about. I just kind of, like Shirley mentioned, I take a different way downtown, just to try to see something. And I guess another thing I'd just like to bring up very briefly tonight is the number of projects that we've issued building permits for that are over a year old that haven't refiled or not completed. I think there's a bunch out there.
We just need to get some projects done. There
Yeah.
are some people that are sitting there without siding for some
Yeah,
area.
it just, I just can't believe this is all the projects that's going on in Sac City.
what's the code go? Send them a letter when their permit expires and they're not done, or?
Well, probably the biggest one was Roy Hospital. And then we had the tower site out here. I don't know what the
What's going on there?
Russ Haas up there, he broke his shoulder, but he's back. Progress is moving.
Tower's up.
Yep.
Tower's up. I called them, they said they were gonna concentrate on their mobile service first, so we'll see what happens.
I guess that's my concern, is getting some of these projects done, completed. You know, and one other thing that came to mind tonight, because I came home going down the back hill. Is somebody living in that trailer house behind, well, it'll be behind Dale's building, or next to the old liquor store that has that pizza truck?
I think there's some construction.
There's
guys.
some construction guys there, and.
Is that legal?
There are not enough places for those people to stay.
But I mean, is that legal to have a trailer house there hooked up to be living in? Zoning ordinances.
I don't think there is anything, is there?
Because I know we talked long and hard about grandfathering in Mark and Dale
I think that,
as a Peterson,
as what?
you know, in the buildings, because we were talking about the upstairs, the living downtown.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think they were in there before.
I think
Yeah,
that-
they were, but I mean that trailer.
Well, that isn't a permanent thing, and I know that they said that they installed showers and a bunch of stuff in that building.
Okay.
Because we don't have,
No.
we are so short
But
of.
I just
these
mean,
guys to
you know,
stay.
is it legal?
Yeah, we looked and couldn't find anything, so. I'm more concerned about things like that roofer sitting up by Junior Martin's house.
Mhm,
Up
yeah.
by the church, it's like, what the hell was that? So. You ever
So-
seen that one? You need to take a different way home, Arnie.
So October 3rd, do you guys want to meet at 6:30 then, or?
That's fine.
Is that all right with you guys?
Sure.
We'll try to find out why we're missing Sharon and Karen. I think she has another back surgery in the week and ankle surgery coming up.
Oh, my.
Okay. And entertain a motion to adjourn.
There you go. Get on.
Hey,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
second?
Yeah,
Yep,
second.
yep, okay.